Don't know if you noticed, but Mario's everywhere, and when you're as big as Mario, you're bound to have a spin-off or two, and oh boy did Mario get some spin-offs. Sports games, puzzle games, racing games, a goddamn MS Paint game. But we're not here to talk about any of that, nah. We're here to talk about the big one, Mario's RPG games. You see, back in the day, this was Mario. You run, you jump, you save the princess, if you're good, and that's the game. Yeah, sometimes you go golfing or whatever, but for the most part, this is all Mario was at the time. But then Nintendo got together with a company called Squaresoft and started work on a project that would completely defy what was expected from a Mario game. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. It's an RPG with Mario in it, and it was great. It had this amazing story with this cool sword guy that comes out of the sky and stabs Bowser's castle, and he's all like, the game looked beautiful, the characters were super memorable, and it was just a perfect blend of traditional RPG elements with the Mario universe. So yeah, Super Mario RPG was a big hit. So of course, Nintendo immediately started planning for a sequel. Except there was a bit of a problem. Nintendo and Squaresoft weren't really on talking terms anymore. You see, it was this whole thing where Nintendo wanted to stick with cartridges instead of CDs for their next home console. Square wasn't having any of that, so they jumped ship over to the competition since they were using CDs and made a killing over there. With Squaresoft out of the picture, Nintendo was forced to find another studio to make the sequel. So they got together with their friends at Intelligent Systems and started work on Super Mario RPG 2. Except they didn't want to piss off Squaresoft more than they probably already did, so they decided to change the name to Mario Story, which would ultimately become Paper Mario when it was brought over to the West. Now, my experience with the Paper Mario series is weird. You see, I've only ever played through the quote-unquote bad ones. I know what you're thinking, but don't worry, I already got rid of it. If you know anything about Paper Mario, you'll know that the first two games are considered by many to be some of the greatest games of all time, while the rest are considered to be mediocre at best and a complete train wreck at their worst. Which is why I'm sometimes a bit hesitant to tell people that I actually remember enjoying these entries. Well, all of them except one at least. But that's just made me even more eager to try the rest of the series. I mean, if I was able to enjoy the bad Paper Mario games as much as I did, I can't even imagine how much I'd enjoy the actual good ones. So I think it's finally time. Let's go all the way back to the very first Paper Mario and see what I've been missing out on. Initially released in Japan in the year 2000 and a year later for the rest of the world, the original Paper Mario definitely stood out from the crowd. You see, it was all about cutting-edge 3D graphics back then. The 5th generation of consoles were very much defined by these iconic low-poly 3D models. So when you're used to games looking like this for an entire generation, then something comes along that uses 2D sprites instead of 3D models, well, it's definitely gonna turn some heads. For good reasons though. You see, while the sprites and level geometry are pretty low res by today's standards, there's no denying that this is one of the best looking games on the N64. The visual style isn't just for looks either, it also helps enhance one of the most important aspects of Paper Mario, its personality. This game is defined by its character interactions and witty dialogue. The art style enhances these components by allowing characters to be more expressive. You see, while 3D models at the time were charming in their own right, they couldn't hold a candle to the expressiveness that could be achieved with the traditional 2D sprite. I mean, just imagine Bowser's big old mouth-breathing N64 model waltzing in trying to flirt with Peach. It just looked creepy and unsettling. Whereas with 2D sprites, they're able to make it seem a lot more playful and absurd. But anyways, with this being an RPG and all, there's obviously got to be some kind of story. So what does this game have in store for us? Well, Paper Mario starts with Bowser committing a goddamn felony by breaking into a place called Starhaven and stealing an item called the Star Rod.
You son of a bitch!
That's Kirby's thing! So we find out the Star Rod can apparently grant wishes and is guarded by a bunch of star spirits, but they're goddamn useless because, like I said, Bowser just kind of takes the thing, no problem at all. We then cut to the Mario household, where Luigi apparently doesn't matter because only Mario gets his name on the house, damn it. So they receive a letter from Princess Peach telling them she's throwing a party and both Mario and Luigi are invited. Also, the party's taking place right now. Thanks for the heads up, I guess. So we go to the party, mingle with some guests, and then Mario gets invited to Peach's private chambers. Yeah, you know what, it's whatever, just make yourself at home, I guess. So Bowser uses a Star Rod to kick our ass, he steals the castle with Peach in it, and we learn Mario needs to find the 7 star spirits or whatever to save the day. So yeah, it's your typical Mario plot of having to save the princess from the big battle of Bowser, except this time we got some RPG plot MacGuffins to collect. On one hand, this is a pretty big disappointment, especially when you consider how much more unique the previous Mario RPG story was. But on the other hand, I don't feel like this game really needed much more in terms of plot. Every chapter has its own self-contained story with its own set of memorable characters and set pieces. You'll be saving a village of boos from a ghost-eating monster, helping an archaeologist find a lost treasure in a volcano, and even entering a toy box where a group of rogue shy guys hide out and steal stuff from people. While I would have enjoyed having a more interesting end goal to work towards, I found it ultimately didn't matter due to how enjoyable the actual journey to get to that end goal was. Now, with this being a turn-based RPG, the combat is obviously, well, turn-based. Super Mario RPG had one of the most unique battle systems of all time, and I was excited to see how Paper Mario improved upon it. My expectations were pretty high, too. The battle music was upbeat and exciting, and the stage play aesthetic was extremely charming. Everything was looking pretty promising. That is, until I actually started playing it.
That's it?
There was just no depth or strategy besides choosing between your hammer or jump attack. You just take turns smacking each other around until someone decides to fall over. Even when I got to the first real boss fight, it was the same exact thing, except now, it's a big Goomba this time. What am I supposed to do now? Jump on him a bunch of times till he falls over just like every other goddamn enemy you just fought. Honestly, I was almost ready to call it quits. I just wasn't having fun. Yeah, the dialogue was pretty funny at times, but if the gameplay isn't keeping me invested, well, then why should I care? But I decided to keep playing, and well, I am so glad I did, because everything changed once I got this item. The Lucky Star lets you use action commands, and this simple little addition turned one of the most boring battle systems I've ever experienced into one of the best. Instead of just pressing A and watching a canned animation play, you now have to time your button presses just as Mario hits an enemy in order to do the most amount of damage, and it's just so satisfying to pull off. Pretty much everything you do in a battle now has a unique action command tied to it. You'll hold the control stick in a specific direction to charge your hammer, press A at the exact moment an enemy attacks to defend, and tons more. This makes you feel so much more engaged in each battle and turns Paper Mario into a game about skill rather than just pure strategy like most other turn-based games. Super Mario RPG also had a similar timed hit system, but Paper Mario just makes so many improvements to it by adding a lot more variety to the actions you'll need to do for each attack. I was amazed by how much of a difference this simple little addition made to the combat, which just got me thinking, why the hell weren't action commands unlocked from the start? I mean, the Super Mario RPG let you use them right away, so why not Paper Mario? Well, while playing through the game, you'll notice pretty quickly that Paper Mario's target demographic is not hardcore RPG fans, but instead people who are completely new to the genre. This game is the exact definition of baby's first RPG. It's a stupidly easy game, which isn't a bad thing, especially when you consider the demographic they were going for. You see, the RPGs kind of have this bad rep of being overly complicated and confusing for newcomers. Paper Mario is looking to avoid sharing that same reputation by making everything as simple and easy to digest as possible. So the only reason I can think of as to why action commands aren't unlocked from the start is they didn't want to risk overwhelming anyone with this mechanic. But really, are action commands that hard to understand? A better way to introduce them would have been to handle it exactly how Super Mario RPG did, where they're there from the start but aren't explained right away. So basically, if you know about them, you can use them, but if not, it's like the mechanic doesn't even exist yet. You know, kind of like the saying of what you don't know can hurt you, and action commands can't hurt you. I mean, just here, look, I'm fine. After each battle, though, you'll collect a certain number of star points, which is this game's version of experience points. Collect 100 and Mario will level up. However, leveling up doesn't work quite how you might think it would. Instead of getting random stat boosts and skills with each level up, you instead get to choose to upgrade one of three things: hit points, flower points, or badge points. Hit points obviously upgrades your HP and allows you to take more damage in battle. Flower points allow you to use special attacks, and badge points allow you to equip more badges. Badges are found everywhere in Paper Mario and are integral to the combat. You see, they're used to give Mario more abilities in battle. However, each badge costs a certain amount of badge points to equip, which means if you want to equip more badges, you'll need to upgrade your badge points. The cool thing about badges is they allow you to customize Mario to fit your playstyle. Want to play more offensively? Well, then equip badges like the Power Quake to give you more offensive options. Having trouble dodging some enemies' attacks? Equip the Dodge Master badge to make the timing a little less strict. Not only does this add a ton of depth to the game, but it also helps make Paper Mario even more accessible by allowing players to choose how they want to play. Now, because the leveling system is so different compared to other RPGs, Paper Mario turns out to be a lot more of a controlled experience. You see, the developers always know exactly how strong Mario will be at any point in the game. They're always fucking watching. This is because Mario's main stats are directly tied to your progress in the story. For example, you can only raise your attack after finding a certain badge or upgrade, and these are only available at specific points in the game. So once you find those upgrades, the developers know they should probably turn up the difficulty a bit to compensate. It gives this game a really nice difficulty curve that gives you a much more relaxed experience while also keeping you engaged. In any other RPG, you have the option to grind to make your character stronger, which means if you grind a lot, you could potentially become over-leveled and just blow through the game, which could get fairly boring after a while. Or if you don't grind at all, you might become under-leveled, which could lead to battles feeling unfair and frustrating. It's just extremely difficult to make sure the player is always balanced with the rest of the game. That's why I think Paper Mario's leveling system is such a clever design choice, since it guarantees the player will always be in that sweet spot where they're never too strong or too weak. Now, you can grind in Paper Mario, but you're only ever going to get more health, flower points, or badge points out of it. The only way to actually make Mario stronger is just by playing through the game. But enough about dumb old stats and stuff. I'm pretty sure I lost like half of you there with that big old info dump. So let's talk about something a bit more fun, like partners. In most chapters, you'll come across a character that'll join Mario on his adventure. These are called partners, and there's quite a few of them. You got Goombario, the Goomba who wants to be just like Mario when he grows up, Kooper, the adventure-loving Koopa, Bombette, the sassy Bomb, who's probably my favorite, Parakarry, the Parakoopa mailman who's known for losing the mail he needs to deliver. How the hell is this guy still on his job? Bo, the affluent Boo, Watt, the adorable little Spark, Sushie, the motherly Cheep Cheep, and finally, Lakilester? This fucking nerd. If you couldn't already guess, they're basically Paper Mario's answer to party members, except just like everything else in this game, they're simplified a bit to be more beginner friendly. You can only have one out at a time, and they can't level up like Mario can. Instead, you rank them up by finding a special block in the overworld, which grants them a new skill to use in battle. They don't have HP either, instead they can only be knocked down temporarily. They're also not as strong as Mario is, but they each have specific enemies and situations that they're best suited for. While they're all charming and memorable in their own right, I feel like there was a lot of missed potential here. Outside of the chapters you first find them in, they just don't really do much besides following you around and occasionally talking for Mario, since, you know, he apparently can't do that himself, I guess.
Hey, paisanos!
Partners can sometimes receive letters from other NPCs, which helps a little bit in fleshing them out, but I just always felt like they could have done so much more to expand these characters. Now, remember when I said the overarching story was nothing more than your typical Mario plot? Well, that's still true. But the way it all unfolds is anything but typical for a Mario game. In between each of the 8 chapters is a short section where you'll play as a captured Princess Peach, where you'll sneak around the castle trying to get clues on where the remaining plot MacGuffins are. Giving the player this alternate perspective is such a cool way to tell a story like this. It gives you insight on characters and motivations that you wouldn't otherwise get. It also makes the moment when you finally reach Peach's castle as Mario that much more thrilling. I especially love how the game builds up to this as well. You start in the peaceful Star Haven, which is accompanied by this relaxing, almost mystical sounding tune. You then break into enemy lines with this music that evokes a sense of danger before finally reaching Peach's castle, an area you're all too familiar with at this point, but something feels off. This place was once crawling with guards, but now it's completely empty with nothing but this foreboding music filling the air. It gives you this sense of fear and acts as a constant reminder that somewhere in this big empty castle, the very place where this whole adventure first began, Bowser is waiting. This finale is all set up perfectly in my opinion, with the tensions constantly rising as you make your way through it. It's just a shame that it all culminates to a fairly uninteresting encounter with Bowser, which leads into a second phase where he's just bigger. Yeah. But like I said before, this kind of stuff never really bothered me. Paper Mario is this huge adventure that, just like the mainline games, is more so about the journey rather than the ending. Super Mario RPG tried to be an RPG set within the Mario universe and completely nailed it. But while Paper Mario is technically its sequel, I don't think it's trying to accomplish that same goal. Instead, it's trying to be a Mario game first with RPG elements. There's just so much about this game that goes against what you'd expect from any other RPG. The partners, leveling system, difficulty, badges, none of it tried to fit the mold of what is expected from this genre. Instead, it tried to create its own mold and be something unique, something revolutionary, something that could only be described as truly Mario.